Welcome to the first Dragonlance Hangout. My name is Adam from Dragonlance Saga. And what we didn't do was queue you up to jump in with your name afterward. But yeah, you want to introduce yourself, man?
Well, I'm Joe from the Canadian Fantasy Corner. Normally how I cue people in is welcome to all the men and women of the West, as a nod to Tolkien. But I guess I don't have to do that this time.
Yeah. It's a little bit different because we're in Dragonlance specific territory here today, and we're going to be diving in to really that kind of thing. Let me see something really quick because do you want to maybe frame up how do you what did you think about doing this? What was behind wanting to get together and just sort of riff with whomever may want to talk about Dragonlance?
Well, I ended up watching quite a bit of Dragonlance Nexus in the past few weeks, and I ended up just also scrolling through the Wikia, searching for material for the for my videos.
Mm-hmm.
And this was right after I finished my finals for the previous semester, and I just ended up going, I listen to these guys. I listen to you sometimes when I've got the time,
mm-hmm.
Which has not been very often because I've not had any time lately.
Yeah.
But I'm just being honest. But
I dig it.
Said, I had the thought that, when a friend was talking to me about how the Tolkien tubers always do these big events and whatnot and riff together and whatnot, and I just had the thought, well, come on. In the 80s and 90s, it was Dragonlance that carried the fantasy torch, the mythological torch, and kept the fires burning strong on this genre. And we Krynn tubers, we cross paths occasionally, but we don't kind of do these events.
Yeah.
We don't stream together, hang out, discuss the lore, or just do Q&A or whatever. The Game of Thrones tubers do it as well, and I just thought, well, we should do it too, because, well, not Tolkien notwithstanding, but we were here first. We were here first, way before Memories of Sauron and Thorn, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones. We were here first, and I just had the thought, well, it'd be great to hang out with you, Adam, with Nexus, with whomever, and I had the thought, well, yeah, let's do that. And I'll just pitch the idea to you and see what you think. If you say it's stupid, well, I guess that's it. But if not, well, yay. We all get to come together and just kind of, well, get excited about Dragons of Deceit, which, yeah,
it's going to be awesome.
Oh, it's going to be freaking awesome. Sorry, I shouldn't cuss, but I'm just really excited for that. I'm nervous because I don't want, if they reboot the timeline, I feel nervous because they're
I just lost you.
Very beautiful stories.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it's exciting because what?
I lost you for a second. It stuttered.
Exciting because we're all at the... Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
But anyways, it's very exciting because, well, it's a new chapter in Dragonlance's history.
Yeah.
And that's something to look forward to. I don't know. Yeah. I'd rather be excited about the positive that might come and just think whatever come what may,
mm-hmm.
I think the authors are going to do right by us. They've always stuck by the fans. They've always been for the fans. And I've talked to Margaret Weiss a little on Twitter, and she's a very charming, kind lady. And
she's great.
Oh, yeah. Her and Hickman are just awesome. And I don't think them or any of the other Dragonlance authors will screw this up.
Yeah.
I don't think they have it in them to screw it up.
Well, and the other side of that is that they created this, you can say what you want about the modules, but it's the novels that really propelled Dragonlance to where it is. And since they shaped how Dragonlance came out through the novels, they stopped following the modules after Winter Night. So that's the second book in the first trilogy. So all of the gaming materials have been sort of chasing the novels from that point on. And if anyone's going to be, holding the integrity of this IP, it's going to be the original authors. And whether or not we as an audience agree with a particular story beat or a particular character, it's less important because this is their sandbox that they created. We are just visiting it, you know? If we don't like it, well, there's tons of other stuff that you could go read or, you know, revisit older material. So, anyway. Let me give a quick shout out to the people in chat. Anthony, really appreciate that. Appreciate you tuning in. Jason, thanks for tuning in live. Arrakis, always great to see you. And anyone else who is in the watching this live feed, let's have a little bit of fun. Let's just riff. Now, Joe and I have not talked about a specific topic, as it were. Hey, Solid Crumbie, great name. Mo44 Majir, I dig that. X Red JXX. It's a lot of X's, man.
You got enough X's.
There's never enough. If there's 3 in a row, then you know it's naughty. But other than that, it's just whatever. All right, well, let's roll a die. Let's find out who is going to be shaping this conversation, as it were. Do you have a 20-sided available or a Google die roller? All right,
I've got a giant die 6, though. I like to roll, so...
Really?
Yeah, I've got these huge ones that are about the size, bigger than my thumb.
We can do a D6 if you want to do a giant D6.
Sure.
All right, roll that out.
Use these on campaigns. All right, so...
I got a 2.
I got a 6.
All right, it's all you. What are we going to talk about today?
I actually didn't think this part through. But,
Really?
But okay. All right. On my channel, I've been slowly working my way through the entire history of Dragonlance, so I don't want to do that. But, well, maybe we could just start with our favorite era and our favorite character and go from there, and maybe even get into the build-up to the War of the Lance and where each of the characters were up to in preparations for Dragons of Deceit, if you want.
Okay. Well, let's have the people in chat share your thoughts too. What's your favorite age, and what is your favorite character of that age? And we'll call out to you as soon as you guys throw that out there. Brian, thanks for joining live. Wes, good to see you. You hope a new generation will experience a whole storyline. I think an MMO would be great as well.
Oh, yeah. I'd play that into the ground.
That'd be cool.
That'd be the best.
Okay. So, I mean, this is you want to lead us off here?
Well, okay. Overall, my favorite character is Huma, but that notwithstanding, I think I like the Lance era, because that's where the majority of the fun is, to an extent, I guess, because it's the OG era. And I know that's probably a little bland to say. On the other hand, as much as I love Huma, you've got a lot more dynamic characters such as Tanis, Raistlin, Caramon, Sturm, and on the villain side you have Ariakas, who I've always found really fascinating as a character. You've got Kitiara, who's pretty cool herself. You have, in some ways, Takisis, who's more of a player in the game than in previous eras.
Right.
And you've got some characters kind of in the middle. So yeah, I kind of regard the OG era as probably the best. And I like the build-up in the prequel books.
Yeah.
Because you're slowly building up to the climax. And for me, I can't read the original Chronicles without first going into all the backstory novels to just get the sense of, I guess in musical terms, it's rising to a crescendo. That's how I tend to think. But for the OG era characters, it'd be Sturm for me. Because that's Nifas.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, let's play with this a little bit longer, because the Age of Despair, where the War of the Lance is coming out of, there's supposed to be no gods, and yet the Orders of High Sorcery still exist and magic still works and stuff. So you'd think they would figure out, wait a second, there are still gods. But the rest of Krynn, for all intents and purposes, doesn't actually believe they exist. Dragons are a children's, terrifying, fairy tale, as it were. I mean, if just living in that era would be horrible. You have all these small little groups of, wannabe religious organizations trying to garner sort of socio-political power. You've got individuals just trying to live their life. You can't really even travel unless you're going to be prey to bandits or rogues on the road. You can't go into any other not ethnicities, but races territory, because they will just shoot you on sight in most cases, and you can't even get into Thorbarn. Nowhere is friendly. Everyone distrusts everyone in this period of time. And so it's just right. It's perfect for Takisa to sort of, put her fingers in the pool and just sort of like mess with everyone, which is exactly what she does. It's just such a great time period to be in, but it would be terrifying to live then,
Oh yeah. It reminds me of the Dark Ages after the fall of Rome, after 476, or for those who are fans of the Greek Empire, after around 532 or 538. And it's just like there's plague, war, everything is endemic. It's just, like you said, terrifying. And this is like the Dark Ages was just terrible all around throughout the world, because China descended into a dark age, Rome descended into a dark age, and you've got, if there is a king who can rally a given area, he then says, oh, well, I'm going to break up my land into 5 amongst my 5 sons, and they're going to war with each other. And this goes on and on and on and on till like Charlemagne, who kind of unifies a huge chunk of Europe and says, all right, let's try to bring some sense to this chaos. Whereas in Dragonlance, in Krynn, it's even worse, because there is no Charlemagne. There is no Tang dynasty to try to bring sense to this senseless world. And that's what makes, like, if our actual history had Takisis involved, it would have been even more terrifying, because, well, the Dark Ages we would have probably had the same result in some ways. And the thing with Takisis is, she doesn't just pop back in right after the king priest. She knows the other gods are still kind of mad. She needs to give them time to calm down and kind of get complacent while she puts her fingers into the pie. But she, at least overtly. But I like how she kind of starts to, how did a friend put it? She puts her finger into like the eddy of the water, only creating small little waves. Then she dips her whole hand in, so to speak. I don't know if that's making any sense. So.
Yeah, just with the amount of influence and how she's coming about this. I mean, it's very interesting, because she took a very different approach at the Third Dragon War, with Huma and Kaz being the heroes.
Blazing.
Yeah, I mean, she garnered this massive army behind her, even though she couldn't quite get in yet, which was Galen Dracos' whole, goal of trying to open a portal. Ultimately, even he was going to turn against her in the end, right? He was just going to like absorb some of her power or something from the other side, which I thought was kind of interesting as well. But yeah. I think she learned a lesson from that attempt. So when she came in at the Age of Despair and she saw that Paladin got smacked down by the other gods because his holier than thou, manifest of divine virtue or whatever it was called, completely failed, and his followers were just as bad as hers when you went to the extreme, that he was just like, maybe I'll just sit out for a little while. And she was like, this is my opportunity. This is my chance. I'm not going to lose my shot. She just gets in there. And just slowly builds things. Try to keep it as down low as much as possible. It was great.
Yeah, and she went from trying, I'm going to make a Tolkien reference. She went from trying the Morgoth approach in the Silmarillion, like, all right, I'll throw wave after wave of men at them, like Zap Brannigan would say, just throwing everything at the wall. But then she ended up realizing, oh, that doesn't work. Like, well, it can, but you need to do it just right. Yeah. So then she tries the Sauron approach of, like manipulating events and people into doing what she wants. That influence is sometimes more powerful than direct power. And it's something that makes her in some ways a more fascinating villain than some of Tolkien's devilish figures like Sauron, Saruman, and Morgoth, in that she can learn. She tries one approach, it doesn't work. She tries another, and that doesn't work. She tries the next. Although, weirdly, I feel grateful that she never went to Sardonis and said, all right, honey, I need help here. Can you back me up? because he's in some ways even more of a brilliant strategic thinker.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion. So
well, he's certainly come out after the Age of Mortals. He's come out as a huge heavy hitter.
Oh yeah.
But again, that was in a vacuum of Takesis, when she was no longer around. So do you think Sargana's was just waiting for the opportunity, or do you think he was sort of trying to manipulate and vie for authority while Takesis was still there as well?
I think it's a little bit of option A and a little bit of option B. I think he kind of encouraged her whilst, like, he would never divulge the plan to the gods of light because he saw it as, well, I'll see how her plan turns out and I'll make my move when she kind of screws up, but I'll start to put myself between her and those around her so that they'll, look to me for leadership rather than her. Like, he's just always playing 3 games at once against everyone. Like, he's always with the 4K chess against, especially her, because he knows once she gets what she wants, she won't have a need for him.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like the War of Souls was kind of him in some ways. I think he knew where Krynn was to an extent. He had a better idea of where things were going, but he was just kind of playing the game in order to get where he wanted.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I definitely think Takesis pulled a fast one on everyone. Everyone was terrified about chaos. Like this.
Well, okay, chaos was not in his plans. He would never want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he doesn't want chaos to come back. He wants that guy gone. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, outside of that, he kind of played this long game. Like, he's always playing the long game.
Interesting.
He's the patient.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see what some of these other people are saying. So Wes loves Kaz in that era. That was the Age of Might.
Kaz Fox.
Dude, Soth. Araka says Soth is his favorite. I love me some Soth. I really love Lord Soth. Actually, coming out next, this coming Wednesday, is Lord Soth's song that I put together. I had someone record a bassoon track and someone do the bass voice for it.
It's going to be awesome.
It's dope. It's really, really cool. Okay, so let's see. Wes loves Kaz in the Era. Arrakis loves Soth, as I mentioned. Anthony loves pre-Cataclysm Fist and Daedalus. Oh, God. I love Fist and Daedalus too, but probably for different reasons. Like, I think the real excitement of Fist and Daedalus is that he was beaten by Raceland, right? I mean, that's the real turn, is that this is a guy who made a pact with Takesis, ended up doing everything he could just to sustain his life until he was like literally like sneaking behind the walls of the test of high sorcery every time it happened, just on the off chance that he could like just wrestle some sort of apprentice or some sort of life draining mage, and he must have, throughout the course of it, which is why Parsalian was so, concerned about Raceland going in there and meeting him. Although, was he really concerned? Because he kind of threw him in the deep end as, younger than he was ever supposed to, because he was supposed to find a sword. Thanks a lot, Paladin. Raceland got screwed out of that one. But, I mean, ultimately it worked out for his benefit, but it just, made it much more difficult for him. And so if let's say Raceland never existed and Fist and Daedalus was just this sort of ethereal lich, that's not an interesting character. That's a shitty character. He's just trapped. That would suck.
Yeah, Feast on Daedalus kind of needs Raceland to kind of bounce off of.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways in some ways. I think Raceland's much more fascinating for that pact he made. But Feast on Daedalus is Faust, really.
Right. The devil.
He made the deal with the devil for eternal life or whatever, and eternal knowledge. And what he uses that knowledge for is just terrifying. Mm-hmm. But in turn, while I play around with a lot of different theories on my channel just because I like to go, well, here's a different point of view to, let's read it from this point of view or that one. I like to always try, every time I read a book, I want to try reading it from a new angle. So that but I think with Parsalian, I do think he was maybe kind of, he knew Feast on Daedalus would be drawn to Raceland, and he chucked him in. Yeah. But it's interesting that he chose to get so impulsive and throw him in so early. And it's interesting that he chose to have Caramon watch.
Yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah, I think he was kind of. It's interesting that he got Raceland to focus on negative emotions in a way, like by manipulating this negativity between Caramon and Raceland in a way, because their relationship just became toxic afterwards. Hey, I love that relationship, but wow, does it?
No, it straight up is. Yeah, it's toxic as hell. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah,
But like, so Parsalian was like, when he introduced that, he was trying to show humility. He was trying to teach humility to Raceland,
that claims.
which there's no way. Like, if you ever sat down with Raceland for a minute, you would know that that's probably a bad idea. You're just going to foment scars in that relationship.
Yeah, Raceland is an arrogant guy, but I think that Parsalian was angling for him to, because we have Parsalian's word that he wanted him to be humble,
Yeah.
and his actions don't reflect that.
Yeah.
I think he was kind of angling to have Raceland become more jealous, more hateful, because then he'd be able to kind of go over to the dark side, so to speak, and use it against Tikis' side. You know, it's like he's playing a long game as well. But I think Parsalian's operating with the idea of the ends justify the means.
For sure.
Which is a marked contrast to, say, Antimides, who follows a more Immanuel Kant philosophy of people are the ends. You have to treat people as the ends, like as everything. Because if you end up using a single person as a means to an end, you have already compromised everything you fought for. In a way, this is an Immanuel Kant's philosophy from like 19th century,
Right.
and that we as humans should strive to treat every human being as the most important thing in the universe to us, and as the very end. And that everything between that person and us is the means, and the person is the ends. And I know that's a bit of a weird philosophy, but it's rather fascinating. And Paladin, for example, operates with this kind of philosophy from what I see. And Tanis tries, but doesn't always succeed. But
Yeah,
it
Tanis
seems like,
he's a tough one.
yeah, I think he's like Flint. You know, he's had a tough life, and you know, he struggles.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people like to put a lot of weight on Tanis, as in he knows what he's doing and he's always prepped and planned. But if you've ever read any of the lines from Tanis's perspective, he is fumbling his way through all of this chaos. Like, you know, just trying to wrap your head around the construction of this story as the authors intended. These are working class people thrown into a war that they're going to be the heroes of if they survive. How do you come to terms with that? You have all of your friends are like, you know what? Let's just put our faith in whatever Tanis says. And Tanis is like, dude, guys, everyone has hated me from my birth. You know, no one likes me. Why are you thinking that I have something to give here? Like, I'm just trying to keep my head above water here. I'm not going to be responsible for all of you. And yet he is. And yet he does, you know?
And he does a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rather interesting how, like, I like to compare fantasy just because I find each universe fascinating. And you compare Tanis to Aragorn. Aragorn, it's interesting because, you know, like, all the hobbits basically, when they meet him, go, well, let's leave it to Aragorn. He knows what he's doing. And Aragorn's lived his entire, like, for the past 40 years or so, like a street bum.
Yeah.
But he had a world-class education before that.
Mm-hmm.
But you compare that to Tanis, whom, yeah, like you said, he's working class. He had a decent education. You know, it's similar, but it's very different because Tanis is much more divided in a lot of ways. He's less lonely in some ways than Aragorn, because Aragorn, his first piece of dialogue almost is, you know, I was hoping you guys would just, you know, like me for me. It's
right.
Like, okay, you know, he's lonely for some reason. But Tanis is just as interesting because, yeah, he doesn't want the responsibility of leadership. Aragorn embraces it and takes pride in it. Well, he's the heir of the Númenórean remnants. Yep. But Tanis is not heir to anything.
Well, if you want to be technical, because he was his sister, I'm sorry, his mom is the sister of the speaker. So he is literally royalty. He was adopted by him, and it depends on which story you read, because there are two versions of this.
Oh, yeah.
But he is royalty, like straight up, whether it's adopted royalty or from his mother's side. Like,
Well,
he's
adopted counts. So,
Yeah.
because too many times in history, sorry if I,
in our history for sure. Yeah.
it's like a king adopts someone as his son. This has happened in Chinese, Japanese, I think even Middle Eastern history, and I think a few times in Western, well, mostly in Roman history. It's king or emperor adopts you. You're now royalty. You have a claim to the throne. Congrats, buddy.
Yeah.
Cheers.
You've
So-
just been elevated. Yeah.
Tanis, yeah, I guess he is. He does have a shot at the speakerhood, although I doubt he'd ever want it. He'd
Which-
run away screaming.
Yeah, no, there's no way. It makes his relationship with Lorana really interesting, because suddenly he's either a cousin to her or he's an adopted brother to her. And in either way, it's a little weird.
It is weird.
A little bit weird. But hey, what do we know? It's a different world. They have different norms.
Complicates his relationship with his childhood best mate, Gilthanas,
Yeah. Yeah.
who's kind of looking at him like, what are you doing looking at my sister like that?
That has always bugged me, because like, if any of my friends growing up, childhood friends, thought that my sisters were attractive, okay, ew, gross, it's my sister, but you're a human being who finds another human being attractive. That's a normal, natural thing. And for the sister to then reciprocate, Gilthanas, if he's anywhere close to a caring brother, would be like, all right, well, I don't agree with it, but as long as he doesn't hurt you, then good luck. What kind of asshat, like, he's best friends with him 1 second, and then the split second he finds out that his sister is into him, he's like, screw that guy, we gotta beat him up, or we gotta spread like lies about him and ostracize him. Like, what?
Well, I think with Gilthanas, yeah, he jerk move on his part. What's interesting, though, is that he comes around to Tanis over the course of the story. Because at first he's like, no, I think it's all a bit of the alpha male thing with him as well. Like, oh, well, I want to be in charge. Why do I have to follow? I've been leading the scouts of Quellenesti for so long. Why do I have to follow? But then, it's like, I know what I'm doing on this mission. But then as, the story goes on, he goes, oh, I guess Tanis knows what he's doing better than me. Okay. And just falls into the habit of following Tanis, who kind of goes, great. Like, if anyone should be leading, it's the prince, not, well, like the second in line to the Quellenesti throne or whatever, not me. Only for, Gilthanas to, by the time of Dragons of Winter Night, basically, he went, okay, I'll follow Tanis or Lorana, whatever.
Yeah.
And he's an asshat, it's true. But, no, like, I do find him in full asshat. But I find him one of my favorite characters just because he is an asshat, and he is, he doesn't want the throne, but on the other hand, he's got this tempestuous relationship with Tanis. I kind of want them to, if they split up the teams differently, stick Gilthanas with Tanis, just because I like their bickering.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just found it brought out, like, it's weird because conflict like that between characters sometimes brings out a lot more of the characters. And in some ways, I think Gilthanas and Tanis have a healthier version of the Caramon-Raceland relationship.
Interesting.
Yeah, like, there's a bit of a fraternal bond, but it's tempestuous at first.
How strange would it be if Gilthanas did go to Sylvanesti and didn't meet Silvara, and then didn't find out the truth about how the Draconians are being created because he wasn't with Silvara?
Yeah.
I mean, would this mean that Quellenesti never fell after they came back after the War of the Lance? Because he was absent, if my memory serves correctly, when the Dark Knights went into Quellenesti and took it over with the support of Galidius, I think it was, the Green Dragon Overlord. I know Lorana was there fighting for it. I don't remember Gilthanas being there fighting for it. And so if he was there, would it have changed anything? It's interesting because there's little moments of, well, if this character did this instead of that, how would that have affected things? And Dragonlance is ripe with this idea of alternate timeline because of the Fifth Age specifically. When Takisa stole the world away and deviated the river of time dramatically, we had this sort of like branch off for the very first time in all of history. That, what would that other line have been? And here's an interesting point, because, we had talked at the very beginning of this about, doing a little bit of speculation about Dragons of Deceit, the novel coming out in the beginning of August. What if we go back to that first timeline because of Destina getting the device of time journeying from Tasselhoff, And so the Summer of Chaos happens on this timeline and the world is stolen away, but this new timeline has changed. What? Like, I understand, like, people are concerned about the timelines being messed with, but they've already been messed with. Like, that's done, it's already happened. So you either embrace it and say, okay, well, that's a quirky, weird thing, but there's a whole second trilogy that acts as a prequel and a sequel to the Chronicles called Legends that had already altered time in that. So what's one more novel, doing it?
With it, I would love it if they, even if, let's say, this is not going, Destina's not accidentally fixing the timeline. Imagine if they did release, like, what was supposed to happen in concert. So we have all three, like, kind of going in their own direction. I don't know. That'd be neat, but
I'd really love to hear, like, to read the story that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman had planned after Dragons of Summer Flame.
That would be neat.
It was only sort of abstract in their minds of what they were going to do, bring back magic. But, what's her name? Jean Rabe ended up taking the reins from them. Sorry, I had to look at the book on my shelf. And she did, the Dragons of a New Age trilogy, which introduced everyone to the Fifth Age. And it took it in a dramatically different direction because, TSR pretty much screwed over Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. So what would have been different, And if we get those glimpses that we got in the beginning of War of Souls from Tasselhoff's perspective, if that was what they were planning on doing, then Dragonlance would have had an era of actual happiness, which has never happened. Like pre-Cataclysm, pre-Cataclysm there was that, and it didn't last long,
No.
And it depends regionally where you lived, whether it was happy or not. Oh, I don't know. I think it would be really, really interesting.
As for Gilthanas, what would have happened had he been there? That's an interesting question, just to go back to that real quick. Gilthanas, okay, this is kind of my view on it, given his interactions with some of the elves in Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Mm-hmm. He seems to have been more popular with some of his people, with the commoners of his country. Mm-hmm. Him and Lorana seem to be the popular ones. Portheos was the idiot who just happened to be in line for the throne. And I think that, I don't know if Gilthanas could have led the Qualinesti to victory, but I think that possibly he might have gotten killed because he might not have wanted to retreat, because he would have been in there right in the front trying to fight for Qualinesti and willing to spill his last breath for Qualinesti.
Right.
On the other hand, he is a better strategist than probably Lorana and Portheos, because Lorana basically just said, well, I'm the only thing winning. I better go run off because Kichiro said she basically invited me for tea and cookies. And she listened to her enemy rather than her own intel. Yeah. And Gilthanas had to take up the reins for a short time. Mm-hmm. But, I just mean Gilthanas is the more level-headed one between him and his siblings.
Yeah.
Thank heavens they've got Tanis to help with their family, because I know Tanis is irrational, but at least he can stop and go, wait, hold on. I don't know what I'm doing right now. Hey, Raistlin, I need to talk to you. What do we do here?
Dude, I love that part of it too. I don't think there's enough attention paid, because as much animosity as the companion supposedly had towards Raistlin, he was a confidant to Tanis the whole time. if Tanis literally had no idea what to do, he would always, to your point, go to Raceland. And I thought that was so great because it's like, I'm really frustrated with the way you're acting, Raceland. I've seen you be a good person. I've seen you taking care of the people of Solace through plagues. I've seen you be nice to your brother, and you come back from this test and you're like a completely different person, not just your physical appearance, which yes, is dramatic, but you're also a dick. Like, why are you such a dick?
Well, on the dickish side, I think Raceland seeing everyone dying right in front of him probably traumatizes him. Like, that's like, I wonder if he would be that much of a dick if he didn't get those eyes. But I know, like, there's also those your brother seeing you burn him alive thing, which is But there was something Dan said when we did our first read through of the trilogy together, because this was like 2-3 years ago before we did the channel.
Yeah.
And he read through the original trilogy, he loved it, and he just said, in Dragons of Autumn, Twilight, and a bit of Winter Night, he said, in some ways, Raceland's the leader. And I went, what? Like, what are you on, Dan? And you had him, well, I just mean that Raceland's always the one strategizing at times, and he's the one who says, hey, Tanis, we should do this, or manipulating the group in a certain direction to get what he wants.
Yeah.
And Dan said, he's kind of the leader in some ways, or co-leading. And that was an interesting point of view. I had never, to be quite honest, thought of it.
Would they have gone to Zach Saroth, really, if Raceland wasn't vying for that book of Ficinellus' spells? If he knew it was there, he wanted to find it. If he just said, Tanis, let's go somewhere else, would they have?
Because Tanis really heeds his advice and like treats his words as gold because he realizes Raceland's the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Raceland archetypally is the same archetype in a way as Feanor from the Silmarillion. But the difference is Raceland's way less psychotic than Feanor. And because Feanor is just insane in some ways. I love the character, but I wouldn't want to be in the same room as him. Raceland, you could at least have a civil discussion with most of the time.
Especially if it's an intellectual one. Like, he'll be open to that. If you're just talking about bread, he's going to be like, yeah, get the hell out of here. What do you?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that's why he liked Cressania so much, because she was a bit, she was very cerebral in some ways. Like, this classically educated woman who would rather talk literature and history for some parts of the story, or challenge him on the subject of theology.
Right.
It was first an intellectual bond. I think it's also why he liked Tanis so much, because Tanis could not always keep up, but could keep up quite well.
Yeah.
Although I wonder what would happen if him and Gilthanas interacted more, because they didn't really interact. That'd be funny, because
they wouldn't have anything to talk about. Raceland would probably look down his nose at him because Gilthanas knew how to use magic, but he never took the test, and so he was always at that sort of beginner level. So he's like, you didn't, how could you not make this your life's passion? How dare you do parlor tricks and still carrying around a sword, acting like you can, be a magic user? You disgust me,
Yeah.
I could see Raceland doing something like that. Let's go back into the chat here really quick. And I have to say, Anthony is killing it with some of these comments. Ooh. Bapu is the true high god. Yeah, is the true high god.
Avatar of the high god. I'd love that.
Yeah. Anthony is also saying Gilthanas gets all the tail, the silver dragon tail.
Oh.
Yeah. Could you? Oh gosh, that would be so awkward. Well, they've had that crazy scene when he was just like stalker creepo watching her in the pool. Like she was into it. She wanted him to see her, but still, like, dude, show a little class, turn around or something. You're creeping me out. Let's see what else. Tanis is one of the favorite leader guys, though, for Jason. Thanks for joining live, by the way. Is that Game of Thrones, the bastard son of royalty had some sort of respect, but doesn't hold the right to the throne. Well, those were, the bastards. All the father had to do in Game of Thrones was give them the title of their last name, and then they would be heir. And we saw that a couple times actually in the novels. Let's see. Gilthanas is a chump. Wes says racist asshat. That's who. Who would be like that?
I wouldn't exactly say Gilthanas is racist. He likes Theros. He doesn't seem to mind the Kagonesti. He gets his moments.
He's definitely bigoted toward half humans though, because it's that's why all the Clonasi are such shitty people to Tanis, mocking him and everything.
Although at least Gilthanas learns. I'm not trying to make excuses, but at least he gets his character and says, "Oh, sorry about that, Tanis. I was a total dick. I'll exile myself from Clonasti for that."
That's something that. Oh gosh, man. I'm sorry. Whereas what?
Whereas, for a minute I blanked, but
sorry, I interrupted you.
Porthios never learns, and I just wanted something to happen to Porthios because I wanted Laurana or Gilthanas to inherit the throne, I guess. Doesn't
Porthios get messed up though? Like in 5th Age?
But that's not enough.
We need more. Well, the thing is I really appreciate that the authors were not afraid to stick to bigotry and racism, because it's easy in the 80s when they wrote it, it wasn't as big of a deal as it is today to eschew and shun those ideas. But the truth is that's what human beings are. Tribal. That's what we are. For better or worse, more often worse, this is how we treat each other, which sucks, but it's true. So why hide from it when we can just be honest with, people don't like other people for some of the stupidest reasons. Now let's extrapolate that to actual different races and not just different ethnicities. Now we see a whole new level of bigotry and racism that is actual racism because it's different races, not just human. And it's rough, it's rough when you think about if you try to extrapolate the fantasy into reality, how horrible it is that none of these people, even though elves live for hundreds of years, can get over this bigotry, when you would think that a life-loving people would not enslave their own, would not ostracize their own. The elves are the worst. Of all of them, they're the worst. At least the dwarves, when they hate each other, they just live in different areas of Thorbarden, and they're fine with it in the same, massive kingdom. But not even the elves can stand to be in the same kingdom. And worse than that, they enslave their own in those kingdoms,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's where I wonder, I don't know if Laurana or Gilthanas, I'm not trying to over-idealize them, but I don't think they'd have enslaved the Kagonesti. And
their royalty, their house definitely did.
Well, no, I just mean if they would have in the situation that Soloster and Porthios did in, I think it was Dragons of Winter Night. And the thing is, Kif Kanan had his dream of, everybody living in peace and singing Kumbaya and crap. But, sorry, I had to work that way. But the thing about, I also wonder sometimes if Silvara had been Kagonesti, I imagine Solostrin and Porthios would have freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
And screamed and, bloody murder and whatnot. But I just find that Solostrin and Porthios were the worst leaders any elves ever had. Yeah. Because at least Alhana Starbreeze had a brain between her ears.
Yeah.
Knew when to go, her dad didn't know this, but she knew when to say, okay, listen, we're way in over our head. We got to go ask some humans and some Solamnics for help. We're really not doing great here. Whereas, because it's usually the Qualinesti who are willing to ask for help and not the Sylvanesti, but their positions flipped, which is messed up. But the fact that Solostrin and Porthios fought, well, look, there's Sylvanesti elves. We actually like how they do things. We better wage a war against them. What sense does that make? It's not until Gunther shows up to basically smack their heads in and go, hey, guys, the armies of Takhisis are over there. Stop killing each other. Not here to babysit. I just need the old alliance to go fight her.
Yeah.
Thank heavens for Lord Gunther. Thank heavens for that guy. I'm a big Gunther fanboy. I think if he had not been around, the war would have been lost.
Yeah, just the way he treated Sturm made me favorable to him,
I love that bond.
Yeah, yeah. Brian says that he, just sort of going back to the chat room really quick, he says that Raceland, he saw him as a puppet master rather than a leader, which,
Yeah.
yes, 100%. Absolutely. Let's see. Just good enough. If you want to get in Skype, we can still add you to the conversation here. We're only doing like 15 more minutes or so, though, so maybe next time we'll do it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Gnomes, Talada's gnomes were not peaceful. Yeah, Goldmoon was saying, how are you, hun? Thanks for joining live, by the way. She's saying that gnomes are the most peaceful, kind of, and I think that's 100% true when you don't think of the outcome of their technology. From like personal interactions, they're so focused on their life quest that they don't have time to be overtly bigoted. They see everyone else who doesn't understand them and they have to slow down their speech so they understand them. Like they're just like everyone else is, they're running at this weird slow pace. I don't understand it. They're not building things with all these wonderful technological levers and buttons. Something's wrong with everyone else, but let's just focus on the life quest because that's what's going to really move the needle for the future.
In some ways, they're the wisest.
Hold on, let me think about that for a second.
They dedicate themselves to an ideal, or like to what gives them fulfillment in life, and over like pursuing bigotry or like it's an ambition, but it's not done to harm anyone. Mm-hmm. Although I might also say that Hylo seems pretty peaceful. The Kender are pretty peaceful.
Right. Kender are. I can't get behind the idea of their society. Like that bugs me. Like I'm not I don't freak out and like, I don't know how to put this. I like having a book that I consider mine, like I like the idea, like this is my book. I will lend it out to friends. I hope that I get it back. I don't always, which is a little bit frustrating, but I like the idea of possession. I'm not like an over commercialist kind of person where I have to have a new phone every single year, even though mine's fine. I don't go off the deep end with it, but I do like the idea of possession. And I just can't get behind that whole Kender ideal of there's no such thing. It's just what I have right now. That bugs me. But I do like that they are so open and excitable and interested in everything to their own detriment, but still.
There's a reason Urgoff decides their foreign policy. They can't keep it in their head. Well, they can't remain consistent enough to pursue a foreign policy or any policy.
Yeah. I mean, there's rare occasions of Kender that have been able to, like sort of chase cats, as it were, like herd the cats together that are the Kender in order to, fight off the dragon army, for example. Yeah. They were successful in that. But Jade, how you doing? Thanks for joining in chat. How to D&D? How you doing, man? It's good to see you. Well, I appreciate it. So a Kender monk who has forsaken all worldly materials would be a unique character, JB says. Wow. I agree. You know what? I really liked the Kender in the War of Soul. Wait, was it? In the Dark Disciple, where he spoke to spirits. So he wasn't the traditional Kender, but he just sort of, he just loved talking to the spirits, and that was just sort of his thing. I thought he was a really great character. I can't remember his name, though, to be honest.
I always wanted to see a Kender Solamnic Knight or Kender Mage.
Right.
I know that's weird, but it's like I wanted to see that just for the
I think that would be the worst thing that could ever happen. I actually really like that the Order of High Sorcery has forbidden all Kender from ever being members of this. I always saw the Order of High Sorcery kind of like the Friars Club, and I felt like they should make fun of each other more, maybe have dinners where they just roast each other. But, they do have like these massive get-togethers and, talk about, the state of the world, as it were, and they're, 3 different tents of good, evil, and neutrality. I always thought that they should be a little bit more exclusive than they actually are already. Just because you get so many people coming in and out, and the idea of the renegade wizards, you could just become a renegade. Like Raceland, straight up became a renegade wizard, but he was so powerful and badass that he just basically blackmailed the Order of High Sorcery to leave him alone, or they would be destroyed. What? The cojones that you have to go against the entire order to be like, look, Lord Soth is coming here to destroy this tower. So, you can either die with no magic, or I could help.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I love that scene because he just, zero, was given.
Yeah, 0 Fs were definitely given.
Because Raceland had the attitude, I have no problem just walking away. I'll just take your library. I'll go.
Yeah.
This kid all die. And he basically makes them beg him for his protection. And then he goes, okay. Just all but says to Soth, now shoot. Like,
Well, yeah, the dragon. He had freaking kind Bloodbane coming in. He's like, that was the other thing that, like, the comics really showcased him riding the dragon, the kind Bloodbane.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, really cool. We never really got that relationship dynamic. I mean, he was basically a slave because of the dragon orb, but like Kyan, I think, would have been totally down if Raceland just explained his thoughts to him to just, without the dragon orb, do what he said.
But Raceland didn't care what Kyan wanted.
Yeah.
And that just made things worse between the two. But all the same, he had his foot on Kyan's throat, so to speak, proverbially speaking. But what about you? What's your favorite age?
Oh, yeah, we haven't done that. My favorite age. I have to be honest. I love the Age of Despair, the War of the Lance era, but my favorite is post Dark Disciple trilogy, when the gods had returned after the War of Souls, when the gods returned, and you had the primal sorcery, which has already, always been dormant all the way back from the beginning of time with Krynn, because we had the Scions using elemental magic the whole time. We have dragons using the chaos magic all the time, just that dormant wild magic. So I like that that's there in the Fifth Age. But I like the gods being there, so that there's different avenues to be able to manifest magic. And I love the idea of being in an era that has not yet been explored ad nauseum. It's a promise of something new or something exciting, and you don't feel so bound by the War of the Lance happening or the Third Dragon War happening. You can pretty much do whatever you want and use any, as far as game mechanics are concerned, you can use any game mechanics to do whatever you want, because you have those excuses of why you don't have to be part of the Orders of High Sorcery or the Holy Order of the Stars organizations in order to use magic, priestly or not. So I always loved that era. And my favorite character, and I go back and forth on this, and I'll stick with that age because I have favorite characters in every age. I love I love Mina at the first novel of the Dark Disciple trilogy, when she was bedding Chemish, like she was so awesome in that first book. She was crazy sexy. She was owning her sexuality. She was owning her destiny. She wasn't, this flippant little kid at the whim of Takesis anymore. She wasn't her fully actualized self as the goddess that she is, but still, at the point where she was creating all these, the beloved, which are basically these immortal vampire type creatures. I liked that version of that character a lot. And it was such a terrifying time in Krynn, and all of the gods are vying for power. It's just like it's ripe for exploration. So anyway, that's what I love that. The Mina that we get in the third book, I think, was ridiculous and didn't make any sense with everything that she'd done preceding. And the Mina that we got in the War of the Souls, I wasn't very interested in either, though the things that she did were pretty fantastic. But yeah, like War of the Lance era, I'm torn between Sturm and Tanis as my favorites as far as good guys. And bad guys, I think Verminard got a bad rap. I think he is such an interesting character. That idea, we started this podcast talking about how Takesis had a wholly different approach in the Third Dragon War than she did with the War of the Lance.
Yeah.
And the fact that she was defeated by the ancestor of her first priest, Verminard. Like she followed the bloodline of Huma Dragonbane and found Verminard and corrupted him to be her first and only priest. in a time when there were no priests. I thought that was so badass. Like, how better can you get back at the guy who put you back in the abyss or stopped you from leaving it by corrupting his offspring?
It was a really cool and spiteful thing. I love the Verminard novel.
I actually haven't read it yet, so.
Oh, okay. I enjoyed it.
Good.
It was pretty good. Well, I know I've seen some fantasy fans say Dragonlance has a lot of hit and misses. I find Dragonlance is typically more hit than miss. But for the Age of Mortals, yeah, I think that's the title. But for the Age, but I think that what I like about it is the Ogre Titans. And I love that trilogy. It's one of my favorite Dragonlance trilogies. Golgrin is one of my favorite villains.
Cool.
And I loved him in the Minotaur trilogy, but I found that when you got to the Ogre Titans, they introduced so many layers and complexity and brilliance to the character. I have to admit, I was excited for that part of the story because I was going, okay, so we have in one corner the Minotaurs and the Ogres essentially forming a kind of alliance. And we've got in another corner, the elves are in disarray for the most part. You've got Qualinesti that's been abandoned. Sylvanesti's been conquered. Yeah. And you've got Gelthus with his elves in a corner. Well, you do have, I think, some elves in Qualinesti. But the thing is, they're really at the mercy of Kyan. And, like, I remember thinking when I was younger and first reading through the Age of Mortals, I remember going, oh, I know what they're going to do. They're going to do the Return of the King thing with Gilthanas, just ending up Lord of, or Speaker of the Sun over in Qualinesti, and he's going to have to join forces with the Solamnic Knights against, this Eastern threat. And Naraka is really going to be the deciding factor between these two major geopolitical factions. And no, that's not what happened. And I still think they would have done something really cool with it. Yeah. Oh, and you have Urgoth, that would have been a deciding factor because they went Great Britain with their great navy, or seemed like they were going to be going that route. Urgoth was on the rise again, and I always thought, oh, we're going to have different factions, and this is going to be cool. Yeah. But, you had the decade and a half long copyright battle from hell.
Yeah, that was
sorry,
rough.
I don't like cussing, but like,
that's
hell.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad Wace and Hickman are back for Dragons of the Seat. And I really want to see more of, I want to see what they're going to do with, like, also Urgoth and, like, one thing I'd like to see them do one day is maybe the politics between Solamnia and the Tower of Wayreth. Because those two factions hate each other, but you don't really see them interact too much. And I know the Solamnics have the attitude, we're not talking to the mages. Not even the White Robes. We're not talking to them. They're filthy mages. And you have over with the mages, Solamnics.
Yeah,
the less you deal with them, the better. But these two factions have to they have to try to get along, if only to push back to Kesis. And I always wondered, wouldn't it be interesting if, would they one day kind of take this conflict between the two and we get to see what Gunther and Parsalion think of each other and how much they wouldn't like each other. But, you might have them and Justarius and whatnot all having to work together. And wouldn't that be another interesting book for the War of the Lance? Seeing Gunther have to deal with these mages and the mages have to deal with him and how they that side of the War of the Lance. Because I'm not a big Game of Thrones guy, but I do think introducing politics like that into the War of the Lance can help with the complexity of this story and help embellish it and enlarge it in a way, as you could say.
Hold on a second. I like what Harley Quinn says. Sturm wanted to be lawful stupid. Tanis wouldn't let him. It's pretty funny. Hold on. So How to D&D has a question. Do you think Dragonlance 5e is better with an adventure book or a source campaign book to create your own adventures? 5th edition or the 5th age. So 5th age Dragonlance, I think would be better with a source book to really nail down, because there's so many books that came after, so many trilogies that came after the Dark Disciple trilogy that I haven't been able to get through, or get to really. It would be nice to have a source book to sort of wrap up where the world stopped with all the novels, to say this is your playground. Here are some adventure ideas at the tail end of the source book, but this is where we are. This is how it's going to work with whatever game system is developed for, 5e in this particular case probably. So that's what I would personally prefer. But what we are getting is an adventure book with a companion war board game, and those two, I think, are probably going to be it. We might get more stuff next year, but that's all that's been announced so far. Maybe it'll probably depend on how well it's received and how well the sales go and how well the novels are, how well they do. But we always have to remember that the trilogy of novels that's coming out is a different thing entirely from what WotC is doing with the game material. They are not connected. They made Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman put the classics nomenclature on their Dragonlance logo because it's not connected to the gaming materials at all. They're doing their own thing, WotC is, and Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman are doing their own thing. So as long as we understand that and those two worlds do not meet, then I think everyone, just gauge expectations is all.
Yeah, I think I'd like a source book as well. A source book would be way better.
Yeah.
Because we get all the lore, which is what I love about fantasy and whatnot. You get all the lore, all the stories, and it'd almost be a companion's book to, all the books and short stories, and it'd allow you to go, oh, okay, so this is what happens in this book. All right, that's my thing. I want to read that. Let me take a look at it. And I'm one of those guys who likes spoilers, so that for me, it's not the end so much as the journey. And the campaign setting would also be helpful in campaigns, which that's a must. And the lore, the history, it would be good to have that all. I'd also love it if they wrote the entirety of the oath and measure, like the actual honor code.
Oh, geez. That'd be dry reading, man.
I love dry reading.
Really? Wasn't it? It was like 60 volumes or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It was huge.
Well, maybe they.
You're a better man than me. I would not read that.
I would.
Wow. So he was saying that he was talking about 5e, 5th edition D&D. A lot of the old source books are expensive to buy now, so something is needed for the next generation of players. I would suggest anyone that wants to revisit older source books, the secondary market is ridiculous on some of them. I don't know why. I want to speak to the fans of Dragonlance that are selling these at like insane prices. If you want to get rid of it, don't be a dick. Just sell it at market value. You're still going to make money from it, so calm down. But like the hiking up the prices of some of these books is insane, especially when there's PDFs and some of them are print on demand from Drive-Thru RPG or the same. It's Dungeon Masters Guild or whatever it is. It's the same company, but they do a lot of print on demand on their site. So if you pay a ton of money, you're getting screwed by the fans that are selling them, which makes zero sense to me. You could sell it for a little elevated because maybe, it's not available in some cases, but always check Drive-Thru RPG first, because in my opinion, PDFs are just as good as hardback, when most gaming nowadays is all virtual anyway, it seems like. And even if it wasn't, you have devices now that we didn't have when I was a kid.
Same.
So
when I was a kid, we didn't have I'm up from the 90s, so when I grew up, it was also a poor background. So I mean, I came out of the 70s, and as for Dragonlance, most of the books, I have most of my campaign books and whatnot are on PDF, and I have a bunch of the novels on PDF because I had a chunk of the collection, but then I lost it in a move. Yeah. And I made sure to get my hands on like The Legend of Huma and a bunch of other classic Dragonlance books, but most of them are on PDF, and it's good reading there.
Go to used bookstores because that's a treasure trove.
Yep.
And they're all over.
Every time I go looking for them. That and maybe older editions of Conan or Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But those are rarer than I find in the Dragonlance original editions. I think I've got like 4 different editions of the original classic trilogy.
Right.
Man, It's awesome.
I do want to bring up a note about Dragonlance, their ages, and the game systems, because I think it's important for everyone to sort of understand why things in Dragonlance change so dramatically. After first edition, Dragonlance was pretty much 1.5 when it came out from first edition, and they were at the tail end of the life cycle of 1.5. We're seeing the same thing with fifth edition right now. Second edition came, which was really the golden years of Dragonlance, because we got the expansion talking about Taladas, we got other worlds, we got this massive box set about just the heroes of the War of the Lance era with the Tales. Oh, what? Now I don't remember the name of the damn box set. Anyway, but we had so much material in that era that it was just really, really great. And then TSR leadership changed, and the new leadership wanted to go away from the traditional Dungeons and Dragons second edition because sales were waning. And again, editions are always due to economic factors. New games come out because of economic factors. So when it's not doing well, they have to change something. And so they tried a wholly different approach with the Saga role-playing system, which is the card-based 5th edition, which changed Krynn completely. It made the gods leave. And then they realized that wasn't doing very well. And so they tried to retcon all of that with War of Souls, and 3rd edition came out, and they completely changed it again, going back closer to 2nd edition. But the point is that each edition of the game that is being put out changes Dragonlance to fit that narrative. And we're seeing the same thing with 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, is the game system is different. It does not coincide with 2nd edition D&D or 1st edition D&D that we know Dragonlance came out of. And so they have to change Dragonlance in order to fit the new system. So we saw that Unearthed Arcana, playtest material come out. We saw what they're planning on doing, and then they announced the new adventure sourcebook that's coming out that's going to be running before and concurrent with the War of the Lance. So they're doing it because it's a new game system, and they have to change the world. It's just the way it works, I mean, that's just, we can't stay in I can stay in 1st edition Dragonlance because I'm okay with it, but most people...
3.5.
Yeah. I mean, most people just stick with the edition they're comfortable with, and they'll just keep riding it. But there are people who want to stay with the most current edition. And so if you want to play Dragonlance in 5th edition, like, for example, Lawful Stupid RPG is doing it in the chat here, they have to do homebrew stuff, or they have to pull cues from Unearthed Arcana or what Dragonlance Nexus has put out. And, there's just ways that you have to go about it. But find whatever edition works for you, because ultimately Dragonlance is the story. Yeah. The game mechanics, in my personal opinion, are infinitely less interesting than the story is. And so, when I'm going to start, which I am planning on doing, I'm going to start a gaming session, little bite-sized game sessions on this channel. It's going to start with XDM, where it's Extreme Dungeon Mastery. So it's narrative comes first, game mechanics, super simplified, comes second, and it's about the story and the experience, not about the particular minutia of the tactical side of the game. And I think that's going to be infinitely more interesting, because then you get the character information. It's not just roll to hit, roll to hit, roll to hit. I hope, anyway.
Well, yeah, I think Dragonlance is often influenced by the editions, but I also find it funny how Dragonlance, it seems like TSR and whatnot says, all right, here's the direction that we're releasing the newest edition, be it 2nd edition or 3rd edition or 3.5 or 5th edition now. Mm-hmm. And Weiss and Hickman and the rest say, okay, sure. But then they often go in their own direction, and you have TSR kind of going, wait, where are you going with that? No, that wasn't the plan. And you have Weiss and Hickman who go, well, we write it the way we imagine it. Too bad for you. And they go in it often feels that way. Like, you look at the Summer of Chaos and War of Souls and Age of Mortals, seems like there were, like we noted earlier, there was a split between what TSR and their folks wanted and what Weiss and Hickman were thinking, which oftentimes Weiss and Hickman ride on the edition and then go in a different, more story-based, character-driven direction, which I don't know if I'm just speaking out of my rear with that. It's just something I've kind of noticed, or at least what I think I've noticed.
Right.
But
Well, when
the editions, honestly, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I'm not a 5th edition guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I prefer Pathfinder and 3.5, but I'm going to be honest. Dragonlance 5th edition comes out. I'm going to want to try it out because, well, it's
because you're an addict like all of us.
Yeah,
we're addicted to this.
Yes.
We're like crack. Just take my money. I'll buy it. I'll play it. I don't like it, but I'm going to do it. Yeah.
And you know what? I play D&D for the human interaction and just to spend time with some of my old buddies.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just do this for the fun of it and to see where we end up taking the world and where our characters go. Because, well, and to see how many characters I could get killed. Because my one friend and I, like in university, we started a D&D club.
Yeah.
And I joined the club actually, but the thing is, he and I would compete to see how many characters we could go through just to kill off, and we just became like he'd lose a character one session, I'd lose it another, and we'd constantly be competing to see how many character sheets we could use up.
Jeez.
And it got a little insane. I think I think he won the record, and it was like 2, maybe 3 characters he killed off in one session.
Damn.
And I never was able to compete on his level. He would just ask, okay, the GM, okay, so it would be total stupidity to dive down this cliff. Yes. Well, my character wants to see the bottom, so he jumps. Like, he would just do the stupidest decision just for its own sake. But at the same time, he did want to push the story forward with his character deaths.
Yeah.
So he was often supporting the GM, but also just knocking his character off. And he's a pretty chill guy. I haven't hung out with him in a while, but it was funny, and I'd like to try to kill off my characters again. Maybe just a Solamnic Knight's just out to be lawful stupid. But
let me give a quick shout out. Thank you, Talent Tactics Consulting Inc. Appreciate you tuning in to the channel here. I want to make a comment here based off of what Lawful Stupid RPG is saying in the chat room. If only there was a good Dragonlance podcast available. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing because that's what they're doing. There's a lot of different Dragonlance game sessions. I just found out about a first edition one that's only 2 episodes out that is on a YouTube channel, which I thought was a lot of fun and great. I put it in a comment. Lawful Stupid RPG is doing a wonderful job with 5th edition that is infinitely, narrative and character development driven rather than mechanics, even though the mechanics are there. Dragonlance Nexus has a great 5th edition podcast out with Dragonlance in it. There's a ton of Dragonlance content. And then if you're just talking about podcasts talking about Dragonlance, of course, there's our channels, but there's also there's some new ones that I just found out about. So, if you just go to wherever you get podcasts, there's a lot of Dragonlance stuff out there. And I think, maybe nowadays more because there's finally products being, released. But this is a great time to be a Dragonlance fan. And it's only going to get better for the coming year. And I cannot wait to have more conversations like this with you and with other people based around that,
Yeah, like, honestly, this universe is every bit as deep as, say, Hyborian Age or Middle Earth. And it's often something that is overlooked by a lot of other fan bases. And what I love about the lore is that the problem I have with, say, Hyborian Age is Howard said, all right, here's my history, but then he deviated. And you don't know where the history goes eventually. And at the same time, he didn't figure out every nook and cranny. Tolkien figured out a lot, but then once the 4th Age dawns, you got no idea really what goes on after a certain point. But Dragonlance, Krynn, the history across 5 ages, and for a time it looked like they're going to keep on going. And like at the same time, this universe is every bit as archetypal as Tolkien's and Howard's, but it has its own history, which is rather similar to actual history, like we were talking about earlier. Like across several different ages, because you got the first age, which was dreams, I believe. Well, technically starlight, but you have dreams, which is almost like the Bronze Age. You've got the next age, which is kind of like the Silver Age. Well, not the Silver Age, but like the Iron Age, or the classical one, I should say, and which I guess would be more like the Age of Might with the King Priest. And from there you get the Dark Age, and then you've got a bit of a Renaissance Age with the Age of Mortals. And like, I just find that this world in some ways offers more than the rest. And I love the rest, but Dragonlance definitely had, like, you have the larger scope history stuff, but then you've also got the character-driven little stories that happen, like in Brothers Magier, which just follows Raistlin and Caramon doing a murder mystery.
Yep.
And I love that book because that's the only time, along with, I think, Game of Thrones, where you see a murder mystery in a fantasy setting, and that's awesome. But then you got your geopolitical drama with the Ogre Titans, or with Elven Exiles, and even Kinslayer Wars. So, yeah, like, it is a great time to be a Dragonlance fan. And I just wanted to also really quickly mention, I think there's also the Canticle podcast, isn't there?
Yeah.
They also do a lot.
That's Dragonlance Nexus too, yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like, there's a lot that this fantasy universe offers more of, and then some of their competition, which I know I'm a total fanboy, but
no, it's good. I mean, we're all here for a reason, you know. I do have to say we're well over our time limit that we had set up. So let's do a last question here that was posed. Hold on. Instead of the last question I was going to do, let's do two from the audience here, and let's try to keep these quick here, because I think it was Goldmoon who said, "Where would you want to live on Krynn?" So where would you want to live on Krynn?
What? Okay. I'm not sure what age, but I'll choose the age as well. Okay. Maybe this might sound weird, but maybe the Age of Might, in maybe Istar before the final King Priest.
Okay. I mean, that's
before Peldinus.
Yeah.
Pretty peaceful time.
I mean, depending on who you are, but yeah.
Like, I'd want to live in the countryside, maybe away from the big city, because I'm a country guy, but probably in Istar's countryside, away from all the wars and dramas, because there was a brief period of peace.
Istar. that was the safest time to be a human on Krynn.
Yeah, that'd probably be where I'd want to live and what age.
Nice. Mine would be after Legends Trilogy, so the blue dragon army has failed to take Planthus. I think that time in Solamnia, you know, like being in charge of a keep and just sort of running it. You know, that time in the Lord Soth novel when he had just taken over Daregard Keep, and he was just sort of protecting the citizens and stuff that you know, sort of lived and paid homage to him. That would be a great time in my mind. Everything that came after is a nightmare, but you know, having that wonderful, peaceful moment of just being able to look out and see the mountain ranges all around you, this brilliant, you know, massive blue sky above you, and just living in this relatively safe environment when there's no real safe place on Krynn. But you know, maybe that. Cool. And then the second question I wanted to knock out before we close down our conversation here is, from How to D&D, did you want to talk with other D&D or role-playing game YouTubers about stuff in Dungeon Master Roundtable discussions? I would totally be down with that. That would be fun. Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Although I have to quickly say that my knowledge of like Greyhawk and Faerun, I think it is, and other universes is really, really pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Dragonlance is the only one I'm really familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be totally up for it. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So many great comments here. JB says should do a vid on Zach Saroth. Yeah, it was a huge slave center, like back in the day, but it was a metropolis of activity. Like it was like a hive of Abanasinia. What's another one really quick before we close it down? Someone said the Tower of High Sorcery at Wayward Forest. Someone else said Darkenwood. Lawful Stupid RPG. You want to live in Darkenwood? You are a braver person than I am. I'd be terrified. Oh, man. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Joe. Thank you so much for, suggesting this and coming on and having a conversation with me.
It was my pleasure. I hope we get more people on next time.
Yeah, I agree.
And that way we can have way more fun just bouncing the ball around everyone.
Okay. Well, let's do it. Let's do it again. Thank you guys so much for tuning in the chat. All of your interaction makes us completely worthwhile and a lot of fun. Yeah. It's just Sunday afternoon. If you have nothing to do, why not talk a little Dragonlance with a bunch of fellow geeks, right? It'll be fun. Yeah. Nothing wrong with it. No shame in it. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into this Dragonlance Hangout. Would you like to join us live for the next one? Are there any topics or ideas you would like us to discuss? Should we just invite a bunch of Kender to come and handle our mics so this never happens again? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. Really appreciate all of you so much. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga. We want to thank you all for joining us in the celebration. And until next time, Sanjivar.